My wife slept with her boss and secretly sold our family home for $350, $0 while I was deployed. Now she's claiming half of the sale in divorce court. How do I prove she planned the betrayal all along? I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my wife, Lisa, would betray me so completely. The craziest part, I had no idea it was coming until it hit me like a freight train. One day I came home from deployment, expecting to settle back into normal life, and instead I found out that she'd been sleeping with her boss, Mark, for months. And not only that, she'd secretly sold our family home for $350, $0 while I was overseas, planning this whole thing behind my back. The whole thing felt like some twisted movie, but it was real. Lisa had always been a bit of a bitch, honestly. She was manipulative, quick to lie, and could switch from sweet to cold in seconds. But I never suspected she'd go this far. I thought we had a good marriage, sure, we had our fights, but who does? I trusted her. I believed that she loved me. That's why it hit so hard. When I started noticing small things that didn't add up. Her phone kept buzzing at odd hours, and she'd always be quick to hide it. She also started acting strangely distant, avoiding my eyes, and I noticed she was spending a lot more time at work or running errands. The first real sign that something was off was when I came home unexpectedly one evening. I had a surprise leave, and I wanted to catch her off guard. I was planning to walk in and see her cooking dinner or relaxing after work. Instead, I caught her in the act, literally. She was in our bedroom, half-dressed, with her boss, Mark. They hadn't noticed me at first, and I just froze there watching them. The way she looked at him, like he was the only thing that mattered, made my stomach turn. She was whispering something that sounded like, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything," and Mark was smirking, confident, like he knew he was winning. That moment, I felt a cold wave of betrayal. It was like my entire world crumbled in seconds. I didn't say a word, just backed out quietly, but I saw enough. I saw the way she looked at him, like she was already planning their future together. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't prove it. I needed concrete evidence, something I could hold onto, something that would show she had planned this all along. Over the next few days, I started digging. Her phone was the first thing I looked into. I found texts between her and Mark that were more than just professional. They were intimate, full of promises and flirtation. She was talking about meeting him after hours, sending him pictures, and even discussing how to hide their affair from me. I also found out she'd been secretly taking money out of our joint account, transferring thousands into a new account she'd set up under her mother's name. That's when I realized she'd been planning this for a while. She wanted to sell the house, cut me out, and move on with Mark, all while pretending everything was fine. The worst part was the house. We had built that life together, poured our money into it, and now she was selling it behind my back for $350, $0. I couldn't believe she'd do something so cold, so calculated. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut every time I thought about it. I was deployed when she made the decision to sell. I was thousands of miles away, trusting her to hold down the fort, and she was busy betraying me. I felt so stupid for not seeing the signs earlier, for not noticing how she'd become so distant and secretive. When I confronted her directly, things exploded. I sat her down one night, my heart pounding, and told her I knew everything. I showed her the texts, the bank statements, and the proof I'd gathered. Her reaction? She denied everything at first, claiming I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. Then she started spinning her lies, saying Mark was just a friend, that I was overreacting, that she'd never cheat on me, and that I was just accusing her because I was insecure. She had the nerve to say I was being paranoid and that I wasn't trusting her. But I saw the truth in her eyes, the guilt and the fear, and I knew she was lying. That moment was the start of a long, complicated journey. I was furious, heartbroken, and confused. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, and I couldn't believe I was living through this. I had no idea how I was going to fix this, or if I even could. All I knew was that I had to find a way to prove she'd planned this betrayal all along, and to make her pay for what she'd done. After I laid everything out on the table, Lisa's face turned a shade paler. She tried to deny it, of course, but I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I could see the cracks in her facade, The way her hands trembled, how her eyes darted around like a cornered animal. She kept insisting she was innocent, that Mark was just a sex buddy she got bored with, that she never intended to sell the house or betray me. It was all just a stupid mistake, she said. Yeah, right. I didn't buy it for a second. She threw out all kinds of excuses. Said she was lonely, that I was never home, that Mark made her feel alive again. The classic "it just happened" line. But I knew better. I knew she'd been planning this for months, selling the house, hiding money, sneaking around behind my back. The fact that she'd secretly sold our family home while I was deployed, that she'd stolen our equity and money, that she'd been cozy with her boss, none of it happened overnight. It was all carefully calculated, and it made me sick to my stomach. I started digging even deeper. I hired a private investigator just to get some hard proof. Over the next couple of weeks, he tracked her movements, her phone calls, her secret meetings. I wanted to catch her red-handed, and I did. One night I got a call from the pie. He'd followed her to a fancy hotel downtown. There he saw her sneaking into a room with Mark. They were in there for hours. I got the footage, and it confirmed everything I suspected. She turned her back on her vows, her family, and everything we built together. Meanwhile, I was collecting evidence of the sale. I subpoenaed the property records and found out she'd actually gone ahead and signed the paperwork herself. She forged my signature on the sale documents, which was a felony. She also transferred the money into her own account under her mother's name, making it almost impossible to trace at. First, I knew I had to act fast. If I didn't, she'd disappear with all the money, and I'd be left holding nothing but an empty shell of a marriage and a house that was no longer ours. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut every single day. I was furious, yes, but also devastated. I loved Lisa once, or at least I thought I did. Seeing her betray me like this, knowing she'd planned everything, made me question everything about myself. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted her? I felt humiliated and angry, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to fight back, not just for the money, but for my dignity. One night I confronted her again, this time with the evidence in hand. I told her I was going to take her to court, that I'd prove she'd been planning this all along. Her reaction was pure contempt. She sneered and said I was just jealous, that I was insecure, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. She accused me of being paranoid, of ruining her life, but I knew the truth. She'd been planning her escape for months, and I had the proof to back it up. The house, the sale, the affair, it was all part of her plan to leave, to start fresh with Mark, leaving me with nothing. That's when I started devising a plan. I knew I had to hit her where it hurt, her pride, her lies, and her pocketbook. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. I decided I'd make her pay for the betrayal, for the years she wasted pretending to be the perfect wife. I'd gather every piece of evidence I could, texts, bank records, witness statements, and fight her in court. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions, to see that I wasn't going to be a pushover. But it wasn't just about revenge. Deep down, I wanted her to understand that betrayal doesn't go unpunished. I wanted her to realize that the lies she told, the money she stole, and the affair she had were all going to catch up with her. I had no intention of letting her take everything, her lies, her affair, the money, the house, without paying a price. That's why I started planning my next move, an aggressive, relentless campaign to expose her for what she really was. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined. She played her hand, and now it was my turn to fight back. Once I had the evidence, the texts, the bank transfers, the property records, I knew I couldn't just sit on it. Lisa's lies were piling up, and she was still trying to act like she was innocent, like I was overreacting. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I decided I needed to be strategic, to set a trap that would expose her fully. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be the fool she thought I was. The first step was to get legal advice. I contacted a divorce attorney who specialized in financial fraud and infidelity. I wanted to understand my rights, what I could prove, and how to best use the evidence I had. The lawyer told me I had a solid case for not only divorce but also for financial fraud, especially with the forged signatures and secret sale of the house. She also warned me that Lisa might try to hide or transfer assets again, so I had to act quickly. While working with my lawyer, I also started gathering witnesses. I reached out to a few friends and neighbors who knew about Lisa's recent behavior, her secret meetings, her lies, and her sudden obsession with money. One neighbor confirmed seeing her meet Mark at the hotel, and another mentioned Lisa's strange phone calls late at night. All of this was crucial. I wanted to build a case that showed she'd been planning her betrayal for a long time, not just acting on impulse. In the meantime, I kept digging into the financial side. I hired a forensic accountant to trace the money she'd stolen and transferred. We found that she'd moved thousands into offshore accounts and even tried to buy herself a new car with some of the proceeds. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that she'd planned her escape well in advance. I also discovered she'd been secretly paying Mark for his advice, which she tried to hide from me. Every new piece of evidence solidified my case. The emotional toll was intense. I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and frustration. I kept asking myself how she could be so calculating, so ruthless. I had trusted her for years, and now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd thrown everything away for a quick fling and a pile of money. The betrayal cut deep. I had to stay focused, though, because I knew I was fighting a war, not just for my marriage, but for my dignity and my future. One night, I decided to confront her again, this time with a clear plan. I told her I had everything on her, proof of the affair, the forged signatures, the secret sale, and the stolen money. I warned her that I was going to file for divorce, and I was going to seek full custody of the kids. I told her she couldn't lie her way out of this, that everything was about to come out in court. Her face twisted with anger and panic. She tried to deny it all, but I had her cornered. I could see her realizing that her carefully constructed lie was collapsing around her. The moment of truth came when I handed her a folder with all the evidence. Her hands trembled as she looked through it, her eyes darting from one document to another. She finally broke down and yelled, calling me all sorts of names, jealous, paranoid, insecure. But I didn't care. I knew I had her now. I knew she'd been planning this for months. She'd betrayed her vows, betrayed her family, and now she was trying to lie her way out of it. I realized then that I had to be prepared for a long fight. She was going to do everything she could to deny, delay, and manipulate. But I was ready. I also started preparing emotionally. I knew I'd have to face a lot of pain, but I was determined not to let her ruin me. I wanted justice, and I wanted to make sure she paid for what she'd done. Every step I took, every piece of evidence I gathered, was about making her understand that betrayal has consequences. That's what kept me going through the sleepless nights and the mounting stress. I knew I couldn't change what she did, but I could sure as hell make her regret it. The day I filed for divorce, I felt a strange mixture of relief and fury. It was the first real step toward justice, but at the same time I knew this was just the beginning. Lisa's reaction was predictably hostile. She tried to spin it, saying I was overreacting, that I was just jealous of her happiness with Mark, that I was trying to ruin her life because I was insecure. But I wasn't buying her lies anymore. I had all the proof, and I was ready to fight for everything she had stolen from us. The court process was brutal. Lisa's lawyer tried every tactic in the book: denials, delays, false accusations. But I had the evidence to back up every claim. I showed the forged documents, the secret bank accounts, the texts, and the witness statements. It was like laying out a trail of breadcrumbs that proved she'd been planning her escape for months. The judge wasn't stupid. He saw through her lies. He ordered her to produce the original sale documents, which she couldn't, because she'd forged my signature. That was a felony, and I knew it. Meanwhile, I also filed for full custody of the kids. Lisa's behavior was reckless, and her affair with Mark only made things worse. I wanted to make sure they were safe and protected from her manipulations. I knew she'd try to use the kids against me, but I had witnesses and evidence to show she was unfit. I didn't want her to get away with destroying everything we'd built. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions, not just financially, but also in her relationship with the children. Throughout this process, I was emotionally drained. I'd go from furious to devastated, sometimes within minutes. I couldn't believe she'd done all this, sold our home, betrayed me, lied to my face, and now was trying to act like the victim. It was surreal. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I'd been so blind. But I also knew I had to stay strong for myself and for the kids. I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of this, not this time. One night, I sat alone in what used to be our living room, staring at the empty walls. I thought about everything I'd lost, the trust, the stability, the family I thought I had. I felt a deep ache in my chest, but I also realized something else. I was done being the victim. I was done letting her control the narrative. I had fought hard to gather the evidence, to stand up for myself, and to protect what was rightfully mine. I knew this was going to be a long fight, but I was prepared for it. The most shocking moment came during the court hearing when the judge ordered Lisa to produce the original sale documents. She froze, then tried to deny everything, but her lawyer was panicked. That's when I saw her eyes flicker with fear. She knew she was caught. The judge also ordered a forensic audit of her bank accounts. And when the results came back, they confirmed that she'd stolen a significant amount of money, transferred it offshore, and tried to hide it. Her plans were unraveling fast. That's when I realized that I'd really won a battle, but not the war. Lisa was furious, trying to spin her lies, but I had the truth on my side. I had the evidence, the law, and the support of the court. I felt a strange sense of closure, knowing I'd done everything I could to expose her, to hold her accountable. I knew she'd try to fight dirty, but I was ready for whatever she threw at me. I'd come too far to back down now. The betrayal was deep, but I was determined to come out of this stronger, no matter what the final outcome was. The months that followed were a whirlwind of court dates, legal battles, and emotional exhaustion. Lisa's attitude only grew more bitter and desperate. She continued to deny everything, trying to manipulate the situation, claiming I was just jealous, that I was trying to ruin her reputation. But I had enough evidence now to make her lies pointless. Every time she opened her mouth, I could see the panic behind her eyes, knowing she was losing control. The court hearings were intense. Lisa's lawyer tried every tactic, trying to discredit my testimony, claiming I was paranoid or that I was overreacting. But the judge wasn't buying any of her bullshit. He saw through her lies, especially after the forensic accountant presented the full scope of her financial fraud. The forged signatures, the offshore accounts, the money she'd stolen, everything was laid bare. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and anger. Vindication because I knew I had the truth, and anger because she'd gone so far to destroy us. One of the most shocking moments came when the judge ordered Lisa to give an account of the sale of the house. She tried to stall, to come up with more lies, but the evidence was overwhelming. The original sale documents, the bank transfer records, all showed she'd forged my signature and sold the house without my knowledge. The judge was furious. He called her actions a blatant breach of fiduciary duty and trust, and warned her she could face criminal charges if she continued to obstruct justice. Meanwhile, I was fighting to keep custody of the kids. Lisa's reckless behavior and her affair with Mark had made her unfit in the eyes of the court, at least temporarily. I had witnesses testifying about her neglect, her lies, and her manipulations. I wanted to protect my children from her toxicity. I felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing I had to be strong for them. I also had to accept that this was going to be a long, messy process, but I was prepared for it. Throughout this ordeal, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions: rage, sadness, betrayal, but also a strange sense of clarity. I realized that Lisa's betrayal wasn't just about the affair or the money. It was about her complete disregard for everything we had built together. She had been planning her escape for months, maybe longer. It hurt to admit that, but I knew I had to face the truth if I ever wanted to heal. The most pivotal moment came when the judge finally ordered Lisa to pay restitution for the stolen money and to cease all attempts to hide assets. Her face twisted with anger when she heard it. She was furious, screaming at the court, but her words were hollow. It was clear she knew she was losing everything: her marriage, her freedom, her reputation. Her desperation was palpable, but I didn't feel victorious yet. I knew this was only part of the process. There was still more to come, and I had to stay vigilant. I also realized how much I'd changed. The betrayal forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities and to rebuild what I thought was shattered. I learned to trust my instincts more, to be cautious about who I let into my life, and most importantly, to value honesty above everything else. I'd been blindsided once, but I was going to let it happen again. I promised myself I'd come out of this stronger, wiser, and more cautious. And I knew the road ahead would still be tough, but I was ready to face whatever was next. The final court date felt like the culmination of everything I'd fought for. Lisa was sitting there, her face pale and furious, trying to hold onto her last shred of control. She knew she'd lost. The judge had listened carefully to all the evidence, her lies, the forged signatures, the stolen money, the affair with Mark, and the sale of our house behind my back. When the judge finally delivered his ruling, it was clear she had no way out. He ordered her to pay back every cent she'd stolen, including the $350, $0 from the house sale, plus interest. She was also ordered to pay additional fines for forgery and financial fraud. Most importantly, the judge awarded full custody of the kids to me, citing her reckless behavior and dishonesty. It was a huge relief, knowing I'd have a chance to rebuild and protect them from her toxicity. I felt a strange calm settle over me for the first time in months. As she was led out of the courtroom, Lisa's face twisted with rage and hatred. She spat some insults, calling me a jealous fool and a controlling husband. But I didn't care anymore. I knew the truth, and I'd done everything I could to ensure she paid for her betrayal. The courtroom was silent as the judge's final words echoed. Justice had been served. In the days that followed, I began the long process of rebuilding my life. The house was sold, and I used the proceeds to start fresh, paying off debts, securing a new place for me and the kids, and making sure we had a stable future. I cut all contact with Lisa. I didn't want her manipulative presence in my life anymore. The betrayal had cut deep, but it also taught me a brutal lesson about trust and honesty. I'd been naive, but now I was wary and wiser. The hardest part was seeing the impact on the kids. They were young, confused, and hurt. I did my best to shield them from the worst of it, but they sensed the tension. I promised myself I'd do everything in my power to give them a safe, loving environment. Watching Lisa's downfall was bittersweet. I felt no joy in her misery, only relief that justice was done and that I could finally move on. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown. The betrayal shattered my illusions about marriage and trust, but it also made me stronger. I learned to stand up for myself, to fight for what's right, and to never let anyone take advantage of me again. I still feel anger sometimes, anger at her, at the pain, at the betrayal, but I also feel hope. Hope that I can rebuild and find happiness again, even after everything. This experience has changed me forever. I'm more cautious now, more aware of the signs of deceit, but I also know that I'm resilient. I survived something that would have crushed many, and I came out the other side ready to start anew. The scars will always be there, but they remind me of my strength. And in the end, that's what matters most.